Good morning. I'm Zinklea Samoa in for Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. This morning on a special edition of Morning News Now, we are remembering Queen Elizabeth II, Britain's longest reigning monarch, who died yesterday at the age of 96. At this hour, respects are being paid across the UK. That includes the tolling of bells right now, a gun salute, and a tribute in Parliament. The Queen's death marks the beginning of a new and uncertain era for the crown. Just minutes ago, the Queen's eldest son, now King Charles III, was seen leaving Balmoral for the Aberdeen airport with his wife, now Queen Consort Camilla. Later today, the King is set to address the nation for the first time as King. Obviously, so much to get to this morning, and just what a life, and we are going to remember it all morning.
Truly, and we're going to hear those bells as well, just a manifestation of her lasting legacy.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot happening over the next few hours. We'll be sure to bring it to you.
But first, let's get out to NBC News foreign correspondent Kelly Kobiea, who's in Edinburgh, Scotland. Kelly, it's good to see you. So those bells we know are ringing or will be ringing across the UK to mark the death of Queen Elizabeth. So talk to us about the mood right now of the country at this moment as people are mourning her passing.
I would say the mood, Zinklea and Savannah, is somber, a state of disbelief. Many are heartbroken and also stunned, because just to think about what we've seen this week. It was only Tuesday when we saw that picture of the Queen, albeit 96 years old. We know she's been having difficulty with mobility. But seen in this picture with the new Prime Minister at Balmoral Castle, smiling, looking energetic, looking like nothing was wrong. And then the following day, that virtual meeting was canceled. The palace announced, saying that the Queen's doctors had advised the Queen to rest that afternoon instead of carrying out that virtual meeting. And yesterday, the troubling announcement from Buckingham Palace, first at midday, that the doctors were concerned about the Queen's health, and then just 6 hours later, the announcement that she had died in the afternoon at Balmoral. It all seemed to happen so incredibly quickly, and I think that's why people here are a little bit in a state of disbelief that it's already come to pass, that this woman who they've admired, that they've looked upon as a role model, as a mother figure, as a grandmother figure for so long, 7 decades, is actually gone, and that King Charles is now in place and having to lead the country and his own family through a very difficult and sad period.
Absolutely. I know even former Prime Minister Boris Johnson, I think his statement said something along the lines of, I think we all just thought she'd go on and on, which I think is how a lot of us are feeling, especially given that photo we just had that you mentioned of her just days ago. Also right now, again, these are live photos of Aberdeen Airport, where shortly we will see King Charles, again, now King Charles, heading back to London. Kelly, let's talk about him. I mean, he becomes the oldest monarch at 73 to take the throne, automatically becoming king, actually, the moment his mother passed away. We're expecting him to address the nation later today after meeting with the new Prime Minister, Liz Truss. I'm wondering there, how people are feeling about hearing from their now king and what we're expecting. We did get this short statement from him. Tell us what we think and what he said so far.
Yeah, and he hasn't been the most popular of princes when he was Prince Charles, and he does have a very difficult role to fill following in his mother's footsteps. That popularity has rebounded in the past few years, and he stands in fairly good stead with the British public. But boy, what a tough position to be in today. He has been speaking on behalf of the family. He put out a statement yesterday saying that this is a moment of greatest sadness for me and all members of my family. He went on to say that during this period of mourning and change, my family and I will be comforted and sustained by our knowledge of the respect and deep affection in which the Queen was so widely held. So very true, not just in this country, but really around the world. Other members of the royal family have yet to speak. I think that is being left to the king. He is expected, as you mentioned, to speak later this afternoon in his first national address as the monarch.
And Kelly, there are a lot of events we're anticipating, right? You mentioned that speech, but also we know the Queen will have a full state funeral. Can you give us a sense of what exactly that could look like and also how soon it could happen?
Right, so we don't have any timelines as yet. Of course, there's been a plan in place called London Bridge for years, if not decades. It's one of the first things that happens when a monarch becomes the monarch. But once it comes to the actual time, of course, the considerations of the day have to be taken into account. And the palace has said that the details of the timing of her funeral will be announced in due course and in line with the wishes of the King and the Queen Elizabeth's family. We do know that she'll lie in state. She will lie in state in London so that the public is offered a chance to pay their respects, as well as leaders from around the world, right? We've talked about how widely traveled she was, how many U.S. presidents she's met, how many heads of state she has met in her 70 years on the throne. So it will be an incredibly difficult and complex funeral to organize, not to mention all the security concerns with having so many heads of state in this country at the same time. We do know that there will be a funeral. We expect anyway that there will be a funeral service at Westminster Abbey, and she will then be laid to rest alongside her husband, her late husband, Prince Philip, at St. George's Chapel in Windsor Castle, along with, by the way, her father, the King, and mother, and sister Margaret.
Important insights there. Kelly Kobiella, thank you.
Yes, Kelly, thank you. And right now on your screen, what you're seeing is a live shot in Parliament, which is now in session. There was just a moment of silence for Queen Elizabeth II, and this is where we are expecting to hear from new Prime Minister Liz Truss in just a little bit, which we will, of course, bring you as that happens. Now we want to take another look back at the Queen, from teenage years as a young princess during World War II right up until her Platinum Jubilee this year. Queen Elizabeth was a steady and constant presence for the British public and the whole world as well. NBC News senior international correspondent Keir Simmons looks back at her reign.
Queen Elizabeth II, Great Britain's longest-serving monarch, died after living a life dedicated to duty. Born in 1926, the third grandchild of King George V, Elizabeth would guide the nation and its monarchy through historic challenges. During the Blitz, the royal family stayed in London, despite the nightly bombing raids from Nazi Germany. To the people of Britain, there was this message from their future queen.
We know, every one of us, that in the end all will be well, for God will care for us and give us victory and peace.
That speech sealed a special relationship with her future subjects. Westminster Abbey, 1953, the first time TV cameras were allowed inside to record a coronation. The celebration was seen worldwide. And Elizabeth's reign would be felt worldwide. She was the most widely travelled monarch in history. She helped transform Britain's empire, easing former colonies into states, and all that while balancing motherhood and monarchy, 3 sons and a daughter. The pomp was there, but circumstances changed. For the first time, the Queen opened the royal family to the public eye. She encouraged her children to live lives beyond the palace walls. In some ways, the royal family appeared just like the rest of us, vulnerable. There was divorce and reconciliation. Her son, Prince Andrew, mired in accusations of sexual misconduct. But the tragedy of Princess Diana was an especially dark moment for the royal family. Her fairy tale romance and marriage ended in scandal with a messy divorce and then death. Diana killed in a traffic accident in Paris. The royal family grieved privately, but there was growing anger in Britain that the monarchy was out of touch, detached and aloof. The Queen quickly returned to London from her vacation home to pay tribute to Diana and face a challenge to modernise the monarchy.
I, for one, believe there are lessons to be drawn from her life and from the extraordinary and moving reaction to her death.
Queen Elizabeth set out to change the face of monarchy. It would be more open, compassionate, in touch with a changing British public.
Institutions, which in turn must continue to evolve if they are to provide effective beacons of trust and unity.
She embraced many changes, including the marriage of her grandson Prince William to commoner Kate Middleton, and Prince Harry to the American actress Meghan Markle. She celebrated the birth of great-grandchildren, including Prince George, third in line to the throne. In 2021, her beloved husband of 7 decades, Prince Philip, died. In her words, he was her strength and stay. But Queen Elizabeth continued to inspire people around the world. During the COVID pandemic, her words helped everyone to keep calm and carry on.
This time we join with all nations across the globe in a common endeavour, using the great advances of science and our instinctive compassion to heal. We will succeed, and that success will belong to every one of us.
She was the longest reigning British woman, gathering for street parties to honour their one and only Queen. The Jubilee concluded with a final wave from Queen Elizabeth from the balcony of Buckingham Palace. She was joined by 3 future kings, Prince Charles, Prince William and Prince George. The crowds cheering for Queen Elizabeth II, a monarch for the ages. Keir Simmons, NBC News.
What a look back there. And now British Prime Minister Liz Truss is speaking in Parliament. Let's listen.
She knew this generation of Britons would be as strong as any. And as we meet today, we remember the pledge she made on her 21st birthday to dedicate her life to service. The whole House will agree. Never has a promise been so completely fulfilled. Her devotion to duty remains an example to us all. She carried out thousands of engagements. She took a red box every day. She gave her assent to countless pieces of legislation and was at the heart of our national life for 7 decades. The Supreme Governor of the Church of England, she drew on her deep faith. She was the nation's greatest diplomat. Her visits to post-apartheid South Africa and to the Republic of Ireland showed a unique ability to transcend difference and heal division. In total, she visited well over 100 countries. She met more people than any other monarch in our history. She gave counsel to prime ministers and ministers across government. I have personally greatly valued her wise advice. Only last October, I witnessed firsthand how she charmed the world's leading investors at Windsor Castle. She was always so proud of Britain and always embodied the spirit of our great country. She remained determined to carry out her duties, even at the age of 96. It was just 3 days ago at Balmoral that she invited me to form a government and become her 15th Prime Minister. Again, she generously shared with me her deep experience of government, even in those last days. Everyone who met her will remember the moment. They will speak of it for the rest of their lives. Even those who never met her, Her late Majesty's image is an icon for what Britain stands for as a nation, on our coins, on our stamps, and in portraits around the world. Her legacy will endure through the countless people she met, the global history she witnessed, and the lives that she touched. She was loved and admired by people across the United Kingdom and across the world. One of the reasons for that affection was her sheer humanity. She reinvented monarchy for the modern age. She was a champion of freedom and democracy around the world. She was dignified but not distant. She was willing to have fun, whether on a mission with 007 or having tea with Paddington Bear. She brought the monarchy into people's lives and into people's homes. During her first televised Christmas message in 1957, she said, "Today we need a special kind of courage, so we can show the world that we are not afraid of the future. We need that courage now." In an instant yesterday, our lives changed forever. Today, we show the world that we do not fear what lies ahead. We send our deepest sympathy to all members of the royal family. We pay tribute to our late Queen, and we offer loyal service to our new King. His Majesty, King Charles III, bears an awesome responsibility that he now carries for all of us. I was grateful to speak to His Majesty last night and offer my condolences. Even as he mourns, his sense of duty and service is clear. He has already made a profound contribution through his work on conservation, education, and his tireless diplomacy. We owe him our loyalty and devotion. The British people, the Commonwealth, and all of us in this House will support him as he takes our country forward to a new era of hope and progress, our new Carolean age. The crown endures, our nation endures, and in that spirit, I say, God save the King.
I now call the Leader of the Opposition, Keir Starmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, our country, our people...
You've just been listening to the newly appointed Prime Minister Liz Truss. You actually were watching a split screen there of her speaking in Parliament. On the other side, King Charles boarding a flight from Aberdeen Airport to head back to London. Strikes me you're watching a split screen there of two people in these so important newly held positions. A new Prime Minister on one side and a king on the other side of that screen. A lot going on this morning.
A defining moment for the country that we'll be following closely. And we also know that the Queen's death marks the beginning of a long period of mourning in the UK that has been years in the planning and in the making. It's followed by a generational shift as King Charles III takes the throne. NBC News chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel has the story.
She may have been the most famous woman in the world. The world's attention turns to this nearly 170-year-old castle in Scotland.
Tod von Queen Elizabeth.
女王のエリザベス2世が
La mort de la reine Elisabeth.
La muerte de la reina Isabel.
And to the end of an era. Queen Elizabeth's death began a tightly scripted 10-day period of mourning in the UK. The BBC today playing the national anthem, God Save the Queen, after the news broke. And soon to include the many celebrations of her life and legacy that will follow.
She's been wonderful, and she's given her life to us.
I guess no one thought the day would come, really.
We were at an airport in London when the public announcement was made.
After, I guess, just about 4 hours of speculation, now official confirmation is coming.
The signs were there, weren't they? But it all still comes as a shock, doesn't it?
Especially when we saw her on the television, kissing hands. Just, when was that, 2 days ago?
Condolences are pouring in from around the world. French President Macron calling her a Queen of Hearts who marked as never before her country and her century. Ukraine's President Zelensky calling her death an irreparable loss. And as one chapter ends, another begins. King Charles III now ascending to the throne. He'll travel from Scotland to London. With the Queen facing recent health problems, he's been transitioning into the spotlight, delivering the traditional Queen's speech to Parliament back in May.
Her Majesty's government's priority is to grow and strengthen the economy.
Taking on a role he's spent a lifetime preparing for, since the age of 20, when he became the Prince of Wales.
I, Charles, Prince of Wales, to become your liege man of life and limb.
Incredible pressure for the new king as he mourns his mother.
He's the longest serving heir apparent in history. He witnessed the Queen's coronation. He knows how this plays out, but that doesn't make it easy from him from an emotional perspective.
Now leading the UK through a moment that was anticipated, but has left this country nonetheless in shock.
You would struggle, frankly, to find another figure in public life on a par with Her Majesty. In many respects, she doesn't have an equal. She's a one of a kind.
Our thanks to Richard Engel for that report. And now that Charles is on the throne, there are several royal formalities that have to take place. The first step is the meeting of the Accession Council, which is made up of officials from the Privy Council, including senior cabinet ministers, judges, and leaders of the Church of England. This is when Charles will be formally proclaimed the new monarch. And the White House is joining the world in mourning of Queen Elizabeth's death as well. President Biden and the First Lady visited the British Embassy in Washington, D.C., paying their respects and offering condolences to British Ambassador Karen Pierce and the staff there. President Biden took a quiet moment while there to sign the guest book.
He also ordered flags to be flown at half-staff at the White House and all federal buildings until the Queen's funeral, again, roughly 10 days or so from now. White House correspondent Carol Lee joins us. Carol, good morning. Good to have you with us on this breaking news today. Obviously, the relationship with the U.S. and the Crown is a special one. I mean, Queen Elizabeth alone met with 13 sitting U.S. presidents, which just says so much about her time and her impact over so much time, not just in the U.K., but, of course, across the world. President Biden himself has known the Queen now for 3 decades, and he alone has met with her 3 times. Tell us about the relationship there, the admiration and respect he had for her.
Yeah, he first met the Queen in 1982 when he was a senator, and he was over in the UK on with a delegation, and then he met with her again last June, and while on his first presidential trip overseas, and he talked about, after meeting with her, just her generosity, how gracious she was, and he said that she reminded him of his mother, which to him is obviously a huge compliment. He was very close to his mother, and he talked about her warmth, and in his statement that he released after learning that she had died, he called her and said that in a world of constant change, she was a steadying presence and a source of comfort. And that really gives you a sense of how President Biden saw her, the way that so many people across the world really saw her, as somebody who was a constant source of something that was always there and was steadying. And so he felt like, and she has this depth of experience that's really unmatched on the world stage in terms of what she's seen and what she's done. And that's something that the president has a lot of reverence for and a lot of respect for. So as you noted, he went to the British Embassy, and after he left there, he spoke a little bit about his time meeting with the Queen. Take a listen to that.
I had the opportunity to meet her before she passed, and she was an incredibly gracious and decent woman. And the thoughts and prayers of the American people are with the people of the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth in their grief.
Now, one of the questions, Savannah, that is coming up is whether President Biden will attend the Queen's funeral. This is something that seems pretty likely that the president would do. It's obviously going to draw a number of current and former world leaders, but that's an ongoing discussion inside the White House at this time.
And Carol, you mentioned that last visit between President Biden and Queen Elizabeth, June 2021. And they were going to Windsor Castle, and it was his first trip abroad as president. So talk to us about that specific time they spent together.
Yeah, so it was they had tea at Windsor Castle, and it was, you know, when a president goes overseas on her first trip, it's Joe Biden's been on the world stage for a long time, obviously, but it's a real moment, and presidents really look forward to this moment with the Queen, and to have his first trip also coincide with meeting Queen Elizabeth II was very significant for President Biden. It's been, for presidents, modern presidents in particular, meeting her is really a rite of passage. And so they spent time together. They obviously had a lot of conversations, both about personal things, you know, family and things like that, but also about business and what's going on in the world. And, you know, one of the things that we heard from President Biden in his statement, and we heard from a number of former presidents that similarly, is that they really relied on and respected her wisdom, and that she was somebody that they could draw from in that sense. And so that was a big part of that meeting too.
Yeah, you love seeing some of those meetings. You mentioned when it just is sort of casual, informal, which is hard for us to imagine, you know, for the Queen being. But I even remember Prince Philip at the time picking up in his own car some of presidents that would land, and the Queen kind of being in her dress down attire, that kind of stuff. It's really cool. This picture actually you're seeing live right now on the screen is Aberdeen Airport again in Scotland. King Charles on that plane now, headed to London. We will bring you that. He'll land just outside of London at Royal Air Force Base a little bit later this morning, which we will see. And eventually we do plan to hear from King Charles later today. So we will be covering this from all angles all morning. Carol Lee, thank you so much for talking us through this special relationship with the White House, such an important one.
Sure, thank you.
Now, before we head to break, let's look at what we can expect over the next few days as Britain mourns the passing of Queen Elizabeth. Later this morning, 96 royal salutes will be fired in London, one for each year of the Queen's life. A period of royal mourning is set to be observed until 7 days after the Queen's funeral. Flags at royal residences will remain at half-staff until the day after royal mourning ends. The King will meet with the Earl Marshal to officially sign off on the funeral plans, with a state funeral expected to be held in 10 days' time at Westminster Abbey. Over the next few days, the Queen's body will be brought to London, where she will lie in state in Westminster Hall to allow the public to pay their respects. After the funeral, her coffin will be taken to Windsor Castle and the Queen's final resting place.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.